So it looks like the war has begun, and this time, it's all or nothing. The United States and Israel appear to be aiming for regime change in Iran, with rumors already coming out that Supreme Leader Khamenei has been killed. Meanwhile, Iranian drones and missiles continue to rain down all across the Middle East, and some of them are getting through. I mean, this is a video from just a few hours ago showing an Iranian Shahed-style drone striking a radar station at the U.S. naval base in Bahrain. This is a major facility, the head of U.S. Fifth Fleet. And the reason I'm showing that is because this time is different. We're not seeing these symbolic tit-for-tat retaliations with the goal of reestablishing deterrence and avoiding escalation. This is Iran throwing everything they have at the United States and Israel, threatening a broader regional war. The Iranian regime views this as their last stand, which is probably why, in his address to the American people last night, President Trump warned that this operation very well could cost the lives of America's sons and daughters. Let's turn to President Trump announcing this operation last night. It's a long address. We're just going to play a couple clips. Here we go.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world.
Now, later in his speech, President Trump went on to explain kind of the objectives or the goals of this operation, and in summary, it's everything. He said, quote, "We're going to destroy their missiles and raze their missile industry to the ground. We're going to annihilate their navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces. And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon." So in recent videos, we've talked a lot about what exactly is the goal. What are we going for here? Everything. I mean, President Trump, in his speech, gave an address to the Iranian people saying, when this is done, it'll be your chance. Stand up, take over your government. So regime change, missiles, nuclear program, proxies, everything is on the table as per President Trump last night. Now, it sounds like the name of the U.S. operation is Epic Fury. We have some additional details from Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin, who spoke with some Pentagon officials, who said that this is the first time that the United States has used one-way attack drones in combat. As of now, we don't have any footage of those being utilized. She said the U.S. military has been focused on high-value targets, IRGC significant facilities and capabilities, naval facilities, and underground facilities likely associated with the nuclear program. The U.S. officials said that we have effectively suppressed the Iranian air defenses, and more on why that's important and what that could mean here in a moment. She adds that there were hundreds of targets in what is being described as a multi-day operation, and the U.S. official added that the Iranian response has so far been ineffective. We, of course, are going to take a look at the Iranian response so far. Now, we know at this point that this is a joint U.S.-Israeli operation. The name of the Israeli operation was Roaring Lion. Their IDF put out a statement saying, quote, "The IDF and U.S. armed forces have launched a broad and joint campaign to thoroughly degrade the Iranian terrorist regime and to remove existential threats to the state of Israel over time. The Iranian regime has not abandoned its plan to destroy Israel. In recent months, and despite the severe blow it sustained during Operation Rising Lion, the IDF identified that the regime continued efforts to advance production, fortify, and conceal its nuclear program, alongside rehabilitating its missile production processes. In the months preceding the strike, close and joint planning was conducted between the IDF and the U.S. military, enabling the execution of the broad strike in full synchronization and coordination between the two militaries. The IDF will continue to act to remove any emerging threat against the citizens of the State of Israel anywhere and at any time. Even at this hour, the Israeli Air Force jets continue to strike targets across Iran based on precise intelligence. Operations will continue as required. And we are starting to get a fair amount of footage coming out of Israel showing the effects of these strikes, targeting soldiers near some of the missile launch locations and a number of mobile missile launchers being taken out. A U.S. official said that Israel is focused on targeting the Iranian leadership, whereas the United States is targeting military facilities and ballistic missile sites that pose an imminent threat. They added that the U.S. military is not targeting Iran's leadership. And I want to say real quick, I think this is the first time that we've had a deliberate operation like this planned and carried out by the United States and Israel. Israel, no doubt, was involved in Operation Midnight Hammer. The lead up to that was only made possible because of Israelis' effects during the 12-day war. But in terms of the coordination in the airspace and American and Israeli jets overhead firing at targets at the same time, I think this is the first time this has happened, or at least the first time in a long time. So this is historic. Now, in terms of what we know so far that has been hit in U.S. and Israeli strikes, it looks like the Iranian Ministry of Intelligence, the Ministry of Defense, a handful of military commanders' offices, the Iran Atomic Energy Organization, numerous government and judicial authority buildings, as well as the home of the supreme leader, shown here. So clearly that was destroyed. Not to suggest that he was necessarily there. Likely he's been underground for some time, but it does look like that Khamenei was the focus of at least one significant Israeli operation. And they, as of right now, are assessing that he very well may have been killed. Quoting the Times of Israel, they say, Israel assesses that Iran's supreme leader was likely killed in an Israeli strike earlier today. They're quoting Channel 12, citing unnamed Israeli sources. It says there are growing indications to this effect. There is no official confirmation of this report. The TV station had said minutes earlier that the Israeli assessment was that Khamenei was hurt at the very least, and that this was not an assessment based on satellite imagery, but rather on information from unnamed sources. So it's not a matter of, look, that house is destroyed, so whoever's in it must have been killed, because we know that never is perfect in terms of battle damage assessment, but rather someone on the ground is kind of what they're saying. They have sources inside of Iran saying that Khamenei may have been killed. I have not seen anything to this point inside of Iran even addressing that claim, for what it's worth. Now, in terms of what we've seen so far and what we see coming here in the near future, it's likely that U.S. strikes were focused on clearing out the airspace and the air defense assets to allow for follow-on waves of manned aircraft. I believe in terms of aircraft overhead at this point, we know Israel has put some aircraft up. U.S. unmanned craft have certainly been over Iran. I think there's a Reaper spotted. A lot of Tomahawk missiles, so standoff munitions used in this first wave of strikes. When it comes to volume, we're able to put a lot of munitions on target over a short period of time. We're talking bombs, not missiles. Bombs are cheaper. We can stack more of them in an aircraft, and in most cases, a bigger boom. So the goal here with the Tomahawk land attack missiles would be to clear that airspace so we can put F-35s. I mean, there probably already were F-35s, but maybe some heavier bombers, all the way down to F-16s, non-stealth aircraft flying overhead, able to strike these Iranian targets over the long haul. Now, looking at the Iranian response here, their foreign minister, I should note, mentioned that a primary school is one of the only things that has been destroyed so far, the only things that they called out. And to be fair, Iran is not going to showcase their missile facilities or their nuclear facilities getting hit. So from Iranian media, right now what's kind of leading the charge is that a school was hit. The foreign minister said it was bombed in broad daylight, packed with young pupils. So they said dozens of innocent children have been murdered. The crimes against the Iranian people will not go unanswered. This is the kind of thing that's important to see and important to hear, because it's going to play a large role, whether this is accurate, exaggerated, or just completely made up. It is already playing a big role in Iranian propaganda and how they're viewing this conflict. So it's important to see this kind of stuff, even recognizing the role that it is designed to play. In fact, we've got an even more aggressive take here from the foreign minister in a minute. But we did get news just a few hours ago that the Iranian IRGC, or Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, has announced the start of Operation True Promise 4. And we've seen this with the launch of missiles and drones over the past few hours. They say the missiles and drones of the IRGC have targeted the headquarters of the 5th Fleet of the U.S. Navy in Bahrain and other American bases in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, in addition to military and security centers in the heart of the occupied territories. They're talking about Israel, with powerful strikes. Quick note, let's get into what we have seen targeted so far, then we'll go back to the foreign minister. Right now, again, targets all across the Middle East that Iran is going after, showing how vastly different this is than the 12-day war. We know at this point at least 35 ballistic missiles, as according to Manny Fabian, have been launched against Israel. It sounds like some of those were intercepted with air defense. We're not getting Israel's on this OPSEC lockdown. It's crazy, especially compared to the 12-day war. Very, very little information coming out of Israel in terms of these missiles, even the missiles being shot down. Like, we're just not seeing that footage right now, which is different. So any reports of damage inside of Israel, the only ones I've seen so far appear to have been old footage, repurposed to be intentionally misleading. So got to be very careful at this stage with any battle damage assessments anywhere. Now, in terms of what Iran has targeted so far, we have seen, and I'll play some of the videos here, what appear to be confirmed hits on the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. We've got strikes. The Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar appears to have been targeted. The U.S. Air Base in the UAE. It looks like Kuwait may have taken some missiles as well, and maybe others. I saw some kind of sketchy footage that may have shown a missile impact near a U.S. air base in Jordan. We know that U.S. air defenses were active near Erbil in Iraq. So everything, right? Trump's plan here is to change everything. Iran's plan is to strike back at everything possible. And as I'm recording this, we just got new notifications that another wave of Iranian missiles is being fired. So it looks like this, by all accounts, is just beginning. Another Iranian response here that we're keeping an eye on is their proxy network. So the Houthis down in Yemen have signaled their support. They've talked about how they will avenge Iran. They're on the side of Iran. We've not seen them take any action at this point. What I would expect if the Houthis step into this is focused on U.S. naval warships in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden and kind of trying to shut down any commercial shipping in that area again, at the very least, distract the United States or harass our warships in the area. I would be surprised if the Houthis, it's possible, be surprised if they start slinging munitions at U.S. bases just from a different direction, although that is a possibility. In terms of the militias, Kataib Hezbollah, kind of the largest and most powerful Shiite militia aligned with Iran, issued a statement earlier saying, quote, "We will soon begin attacking American bases in response to their aggression." Now, I don't want to pin this as worst case scenario, but it becomes a very challenging scenario when the Iranian proxies, if the Iranian proxies were able to coordinate in some manner and start attacking all at once. So when you're talking proxies, that's Hamas, largely degraded at this point. Hezbollah does still have some significant capabilities. Notably, in the recent days, Hezbollah has said that they are not going to attack the United States or Israel if there are limited strikes in Iran, but going after Khamenei, they said would have been a red line. It appears now whether or not Khamenei was actually killed, he clearly was targeted. We'll see what Hezbollah's response is to that. You've got Hezbollah, you've got the Houthis, and you've got a number of militias across Iraq and Syria that could not inflict a strategic blow against the United States or really even Israel, but it could make things very, very challenging and much more complicated if U.S. bases in Iraq, especially, and other portions of the Middle East, are constantly having to deal with small drones in addition to watching out for larger Iranian missiles. Now, in terms of an assessment here, looking at Hamidezra Azizi of the Middle East Council, he said Iran's response has been unusually rapid. Missile launches reportedly began within a couple of hours with reported strikes in Tel Aviv and Haifa. The Iranian statement signaled that no red lines remain and that a full-force retaliation is underway. And that's something we've talked about in recent videos. And it was reinforced when President Trump just last night said this is, in so many words, this is regime change. So that puts the Iranian regime on the ropes. They have to fight for everything. Negotiations, we got to set those completely aside right now. They were supposed to go on here in a couple days, but right now, Iran is in a fight for their lives. And the big question when we look at what comes next is how does Iran respond? One of the hopes in any military action is that those first bombs start falling, those first missiles start impacting, and the receiving end says, this is too much. What do we have to do to get this to stop? We give up. That's one option. I think that was always a low likelihood of occurring, but if that doesn't happen, the far other end of that spectrum is what happens if Iran doubles down. There's a number of scenarios we've walked through in recent videos. Of course, we have the drone and missile strikes on regional bases. We've got the proxy networks. Less likely, but still possible, is the activation of organizations around the world, tapping into criminal networks to carry out what would essentially amount to terrorist attacks abroad. Again, Iran is not going to want to stand toe-to-toe, and they are not and will not be capable of standing toe-to-toe with the U.S. or Israeli military. So you have to expect, if they view this as a war for their survival, they will use everything at their disposal, and that includes tapping into terrorist networks wherever possible to carry out low-level attacks around the world. Now, another big question we're going to be keeping an eye on here in the next couple of days is it sounds like the United States is planning on carrying out 1, 2, maybe 3 days of strikes, slowing down, checking out the battle damage assessment, and then trying to offer an off-ramp to Iran to negotiate an end settlement. That's speculation right now because we're just about 4 hours in to this campaign. But as of right now, it looks like the strikes are just beginning. Again, my prediction is that what we're seeing right now is the suppression and destruction of Iranian air defense assets from the United States as well as Israel. And while Israel goes after some of the senior officials, the United States will very soon start going after nuclear facilities and or more military facilities with conventional air power, so non-stealth aircraft in the skies over Iran in the very near future. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.